Typically, I've been talking about, in the past, about dignity and the role that it plays in creating trust in organizations. And the real short story about trust, because I can't elaborate right now, but the real short story about trust is when people feel that their dignity is being honored, they are trusting of those who are in positions of power. But when they feel their dignity is being threatened and trampled upon, then trust is the first thing that breaks down. And it's extremely hard to get a relationship back on track once people have felt that their dignity's been violated. So that's the beginning point that I want to make about trust. But I also just want to tell you what my basic definition of dignity is, and that is that it's our inherent, inborn sense of value and worth. We all came into the world worthy. We're all born equal in dignity. We may not be, as we grow and develop in the world, we may not be equal in status, but I believe very strongly that we're all still equal in dignity. And the other thing I made a point about last year was that even though we're born with dignity and it's part of our DNA, it's our birthright, we're also born vulnerable to having that dignity violated. So we have to be really careful about this concept of dignity. Yes, it's a God-given gift and a part of the beauty of the human experience, but at the same time, I've experienced more indignity in my work in international conflict than I have actually the opposite, where people are feeling honored. So the very basic definition, it's our inherent value and worth. And I also wanted to point out again that the neuroscience has helped us tremendously in getting this message out about dignity, because the very short story is that when people are put into brain scanners and they're confronted with a situation where their dignity is where their physical selves is being compromised or injured in some way, it shows up in a very ancient part of the brain. It's in our limbic system, in the amygdala, where we feel pain, we feel our deepest emotions. But here's the really interesting thing. When our dignity is violated, it shows up, this is what they found, when our dignity is violated, it shows up in exactly the same area of the brain as a physical injury. So I take this to every talk that I give and I say, look, we've got the data now. These data are conclusive that dignity matters, the way we treat people matters. And so if you want to have trust in an organization, think about how well how people want to be treated well. And if you don't care about trust, well, never mind, go violate their people's dignity. You'll get a mess, in a nanosecond. But I wanted to tell you a story about a class. I teach this class in the dignity model at Columbia every year, Columbia University in New York. And I was teaching it. I spent the good part of the morning talking about what dignity is, and people give me stories, tell me stories about times in which they felt their dignity had been violated. So by the end of the morning, we're really clear that yes, we do all have inherent value and worth. But there was one woman who was sitting in the back of the room, and she hadn't said a word. And I was a little nervous about this woman anyway, because she was a vice president of HR of a very big corporation in New York. And I was thinking, why isn't she saying something? Everybody else is really engaged. And those of you who teach know that it's the ones who don't say anything that you worry about the most, right? So she was, I was getting ready to say, okay, let's take a break. And I actually said, okay, let's take a break. All of a sudden, her hand goes up. And she says, Donna, I've been sitting here listening really carefully about the way you're describing dignity. And she said, I think it's even bigger than what you think. I said, oh, Davy, her name was Davy Floyd. I said, Davy, tell us, what do you think? And she said, something's coming through here. And I haven't really thought it through carefully, but here's what I'm getting, she said to me. She said, I think our dignity is given to us in a sacred trust. And she said, it is our duty to be guardians of our dignity. We have to take care of our dignity. And she said, it's not just that we have to take care of our dignity, our personal dignity, but I have to take care of your dignity as well, and yours and everybody's dignity. And she said, dignity has a big D. It's not a little d, it's a big D. And so, I thought about that. I thought about how she, characterized dignity as something much bigger than even us. There's a concept, there's a big concept there. And to call it sacred trust, you get the double entendre there, trust, sacred trust. And so, guardians to dignity, well, that gave me another insight about how I thought about dignity. And actually, at the end of the day, I think it's about three things. It's about connection, connection, and connection. So what is that? The first, connection to our own dignity, connection to the dignity of each other, and the third is the connection to something bigger than us. And the way this translates into work, and I think especially meaningful work, is a connection to the purpose of whatever our organization is, whatever work we do. What is the bigger purpose here? So I think I see three connections, and of course, people who, are also see this, there's different levels of that big D. We can also be connected to a higher power, so it really can manifest itself in many different ways. All right, so I'm going to give you an example of an intervention that I just did in New York last week to explain and to try to convince you that this 3 C's of dignity are important in meaningful work and in creating trust. So how am I doing?
You're doing great.
I'm doing great, okay. I told him to be my timekeeper. So I was in doing a workshop, a dignity training workshop for a group of people in New York who were working on Latino justice issues, and especially around issues related to immigration. So hot topic, right, really hot topic. The problem was they were having some internal difficulties. It was a very small group, only 20 people, 25 people, and they all were in complete alignment with that big D. And their work, they felt like their work was so meaningful, trying to help these immigrants who are having a terrible time, especially in this current climate, who are having such a terrible time. They were fighting for justice for these immigrants. They were winning court cases. Everybody was behind this bigger D purpose, the third C. Now, the problem is the other 2 C's in the organization were having a little bit of difficulty. So what was going on? Well, number one, there were some people who worked in the organization who were having their dignity violated in a consistent way, but they weren't standing up for themselves. They were allowing themselves to be violated. Their sense of worth was a little bit shaky in their minds. And secondly, in the organization, they were treating each other badly. All right? They were having a lot of problems in the organization. So here's the irony, folks. The irony was that the 3 dignity issues that were being manifest by the larger purpose, they were working for justice and fairness for the immigrants. They were working to preserve the identity of the Latino immigrants. And they were third, working to try to make the world safer for Latino immigrants. Okay, safety, identity, and what did I just say? Safety, identity, and
a mission to make life safer for others. That's
safety, identity, and justice. Oh my goodness, how could I forget the justice? Okay. So guess what the 3 major dignity violations that were taking place within the organization? Take a guess what they were. Safety, justice, and identity. There were gender issues. There were issues of, different Latino identity groups were competing with each other. Nobody felt safe in the organization. Some of the big bosses were screaming at their staff assistants. So, how ironic is this? That the very issues that they were out there fighting beautifully, it made me want to weep to hear how successful they were in this bigger picture connection to dignity. But I'm telling you, unless you have all 3 of those connections in balance and in alignment, you're going to get some kind of dysfunctional, untrusting, and the sense of a lack of meaning in the work that you do. So I'm suggesting that these 3 C's, connection to your own dignity, dignity of others, and to something bigger than yourself, have to somehow get balanced and aligned. And this I mean, it really, I'm still reeling from this training, that those same exact violations that they were fighting so tirelessly to protect were the ones that they were perpetrating on each other in the organization. And I have to tell you, this organization was remarkable because they saw that connection, and they just sat there with it. They didn't try to defend themselves, and they committed to working on these issues, to developing a process with me to help them through it. So what's the conclusion here? I think what really gives our life meaning and purpose, I think we have to have those three C's in alignment. Even if one is out of whack, we're still going to be have a troubled relationship with our work. If we have even one of them out of whack, it's going to be problematic. And when we think about creating this sense of meaning in our work, I also want to point out that I think we have personal responsibility in that. I've tend to think about the meaning and the meaningfulness really being part of the duty of the leadership and those who are in charge of the company, that they have to create these environments where people feel like they're doing meaningful work, feel like they're being treated with dignity. But I think everybody has responsibility for that. I think the employees and the leadership together have responsibility, because you can't, I mean, if you're waiting for your leadership to create an opportunity for you to honor the dignity of your fellow employees or to even honor your own dignity, you have to know that. You have to be really centered in that sense that I'm worthy no matter what. And if you're off on that point, you know, even the most meaningful work you might miss an opportunity to feel the power of that meaning. So 3 C's, connection, 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 and that's my message for this year, and thank you.